Welcome to the workshop on OER copyright and attributions. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. Charles Darwin University acknowledges and pays respect to elders past and present of the Larrakia people, where the main Darwin campus is located, along with our campuses on lands across Australia. We acknowledge First Nations people's long history of sustaining their communities and environments over thousands of years. They are the first educators and the first innovators. What will we be talking about in today's workshop? We're looking at what is copyright, how copyright can be used in OER, open licensing, Creative Commons licensing, public domain, using openly licensed and public domain material in practice, compatibility of licenses, attribution, and using Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. We'll begin by looking at open licensing and the public domain. What is copyright? It is a type of intellectual property that protects expressed ideas in material form but not the idea itself. There are different types of creative works under copyright. Copyright protection is automatic. Copyright owners have a bunch of exclusive rights and can be used with permission, license, or exception. How can you use copyright correctly? Either you or your employer owns it. It can be used under non-infringing use. It can be an exception under the Copyright Act and can be used under license or with permission. What is an open license? A license is a document that specifies what can and cannot be done with a work, whether that be sound, text, image, or multimedia. It grants permissions and states restrictions. Broadly speaking, an open license is one which grants permission to access, reuse, and redistribute a work with few or no restrictions, as defined by the Open Knowledge Foundation. You can identify resources with an open license by a notice that will be displayed with the work, stating which license it has been released under with a link to that license. There are some examples on the next screen, figures 1.1 and 1.4. So figures 1.1 to 1.4, from the top left to the bottom right, actually have a number of components within their attribution or their notice. This includes the title, that is underlined or hyperlinked, so you can go to the original source of the image, followed by the creator or the author of that image, and then the license that has been assigned to that image that it is released under. You can see figures 1.5 to 1.10 here, and you can see the notices of these images and the licenses that they have been released under. Creative Commons. Creative Commons is a non-profit organisation that started in 2001. They publish a set of free public licenses that give everyone from individual creators to large companies and institutions a clear, consistent way to grant permissions to others to use their work. On the screen here, there is a video, Creative Commons licenses explained. It goes for about 5 minutes, and feel free to watch this at a later stage. So under Creative Commons licensing, there are 6 licenses to choose from, created from 4 elements. These are BY, NC, SA, and ND. They provide standardized permissions to share, use, and adapt your work, especially in the open space. The current suite of licenses is 4.0, moves away from all rights reserved to some rights reserved, and licenses include summary and legal code. It is important to note, however, that Creative Commons works within copyright, and CC licensing does not grant any additional rights over and above copyright law. Creative Commons is also not suitable for software. Here you can see the 6 licenses and the different elements that make up these licenses under the Creative Commons licensing system. The attribution license, or CC BY, allows people to use the work for any purpose, even commercially and even in modified form, as long as they give attribution to the creator. The attributions share alike license, or by SA, allows people to use the work for any purpose, even commercially and even in modified form, as long as they give attribution to the creator and make any adaptations they share with others available under the same or a compatible license. The third license, the Attribution Non-Commercial License, or BYNC, allows people to use the work for non-commercial purposes only, and only as long as they give attribution to their creator. The Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike License, or BYNCSA, allows people to use the work for non-commercial purposes only, and only as long as they give attribution to a creator and make any adaptations they share with others available under the same or a compatible license. The Attribution No Derivatives License, or BYND, allows people to use the unadapted work for any purpose, even commercially, as long as they give attribution to their creator. And the final license, the Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives License, or BYNC-ND, is the most restrictive license. It allows people to use the unadapted work for non-commercial purposes only, and only as long as they give attribution to the licensor. When working with copyright in the open space, it is important to understand the 5 R's. According to David Wiley's definition, a true OER is one that is either 1, in the public domain, or 2, licensed in a manner that provides everyone with free and perpetual permission to engage in the 5 R activities. And the visual on this screen shows you the actual 5 R's and explains them in more detail. Retain. Users have the right to make, archive, and own copies of the content. Reuse. Content can be reused in its unaltered form. Remix. The original or revised content can be combined with other content to create something new. Revise. Content can be adapted, adjusted, modified, or altered. And redistribute. Copies of the content can be shared with others in its original, revised, or remixed form. Here we see a number of different symbols used within Creative Commons licensing. We have the by, or the different elements, the by attribution. It's a requirement in all CC licenses. We use the tassel approach when writing our notices. That is title, author, source, and license. So using the tassel approach, you can see here that we have Creative Commons 10th Birthday Celebration San Francisco as the title, but it is also the source. By clicking on the hyperlink, it will take you to the source of that original image. By TVOL, TVOL is the author in this case, and it is licensed under a CC BY 2.0 license. Non-commercial, or NC, limits others making money from the work. It may limit certain users in paid courses. Commercial here is defined by the use, not the user. Commercial use can be allowed with the copyright owner's permission. If we look at SA, or share alike, it limits how others can share derivative works. It can cause compatibility issues for users, and it requires the same or compatible license to be attached unless other permissions are received from the copyright owner. An ND, or no derivatives, limits others making changes to the work. It is not OER friendly. Derivative works include adaptations, translations, synchronizations, and remixes. And derivative works can be allowed with the copyright owner's permission. Other licensing considerations. CC licensing cannot be revoked. So once you've actually applied a CC license to a published work, it cannot be revoked. It cannot be actually wound back. But you can also have other or alternative versions. If you are creating new editions of an OER, they don't have to have the same licensing. The same resource can have multiple licenses. So if you have a variety of chapters, each of the chapters can have different licenses depending on the content within. However, the clarity around materials is key. If materials are excluded from the OER's licensing, please make this clear. And if creating a derivative work, in addition to tassel, note any other changes you've made. We'll now look at the concept of public domain. Copyright lasts a long time, but not forever. In Australia, copyright typically expires 70 years after the death of the creator, while in Aotearoa, New Zealand, it's currently 50 years after death. However, duration can vary depending on factors such as the type of material and copyright owner. Amendments to copyright law also mean that it can be difficult to determine if material has expired. You can use the following sites and resources to help determine if copyright has expired in your material. So there's some links here in terms of Australia to duration of copyright and the copyright term flowchart by the Australian Libraries and Archives Copyright Coalition that could be of use to you. And in regards to New Zealand, the duration of copyright by the New Zealand Intellectual Property Office. So if we have this particular symbol, public domain, and the 0 with the cross through it, it is actually a public domain dedication. It indicates that the creator has waived all of their rights to the work worldwide under copyright law. So while copyright expiry was traditionally the main way material entered the public domain, it is now also possible for creators to dedicate their material to the public domain. Creators who want to take a no rights reserved approach and disclaim copyright entirely can use the Creative Commons public domain dedication tool. This is different from the CC licenses already discussed, as CC0 material has absolutely no conditions attached. You don't even need to provide an attribution if you see this symbol. And there's also the public domain mark. It indicates that there is no known copyright in any jurisdiction. Materials that have no copyright due to age, form, etc. And there is no attribution requirement for these particular resources. Looking at the Creative Commons licenses in a visual form, the infographic here shows the spectrum of openness from the most to the least open options. So you can see if we have CC BY or the CC in the public domain or the CC BY SA, that is seen as the most open of the Creative Commons licenses. And then we go all the way down to the C all rights reserved, which is the least open. This table here shows us the compatibility of licenses and how you can actually incorporate them depending on which ones you're actually using and how open they may be. So if we have a look at the public domain, you can have a look across and see if they actually are compatible with other licenses for the public domain, is compatible with CC BY and CC BY SA and CC BY NC. But as you can see, as you go down, if you look at the CC BY ND license, you can see that it is not compatible with the public domain, is not compatible with CC BY or CC BY SA, and so on and so forth. So you can see that CC BY ND license is not compatible with the other licenses according to this particular table. Licensing adaptations. This is an interesting table. You can have a look at the status of the original work and then the adapter's license and see which can be matched with which. So if you were looking at the CC BY and the public domain, you'd look at the standard original work, and then you'd look at whether it could actually look at be adapted, the license, the public domain, and it actually looks like that is not recommended, but is technically permitted. So the orange lines, not recommended, license, but technically permitted. The green ticks are licenses are good to use, and if it is a cross, it shows that licenses cannot be used. Okay, so you can have a look at what licenses, if you're looking at original work, the status of original work, and what you might be actually applying, the licenses you might be applying if you are adapting OERs. This will give you a very good guideline. The next section deals with attribution and using copyright material in OER. Material which isn't in the public domain or openly licensed is not recommended to be used in OER. This is because it doesn't meet the definition of an OER, and copyright impacts the right to retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute, or the 5 Rs, as we have looked at before. That said, there are occasions where it may be necessary to use copyright material. For example, if you're working on an open textbook and need to include unique copyright material to explain a concept. So this could be a quote from a literary work, an image from a seminal research paper, or an excerpt from a video. Using copyright material in OER raises a number of issues. First of all, it can only be used when it is illegally allowed. This can be difficult to determine and take up a significant amount of time. The 3 strategies which may allow copyright material to be used are copyright exceptions, linking embedding, and permissions. Copyright exceptions. Both Australian and New Zealand copyright law contain exceptions that allow material to be used in specific circumstances. Unfortunately, most exceptions contain limitations that typically make them incompatible with OER. For example, under fair dealing for research or study, a person may be able to copy something for their own use, but they cannot share it with others. This means that the exception cannot be used since sharing is the most fundamental aspect of an OER. If you're working on an OER project, you should check what approach your university has adopted around exceptions and seek advice from your university copyright officer. At CDU, the University Copyright Officer is Bernadette Royal. Please contact her if you have any questions in that space. Linking and embedding. If the material is available online, you can choose not to exercise any copyright rights by providing a link or possibly embedding it directly into your OER. When you provide a link, people are directed to visit the original site where the material is hosted and no copy is made. However, you still need to be careful when providing links and avoid linking to illegitimate material. So this is material which has been made available online without the copyright owner's permission. Any material behind a paywall. This includes library subscription databases. While this is common practice within universities, it is important to remember that OER are not limited to an institutional cohort. So anyone outside of the subscribed institution won't have access to that material. Material with other login requirements. Even if there's no cost involved in creating an account, you should consider the privacy of users and if they will need to give up personal information to access the material. And unprofessional sites, such as sites with an overwhelming amount of pop-up ads or other advertising. So embedding is like linking in that no copy is made, but users do not need to separately visit the site where the material is hosted. This is done by copying the embed code usually symbolized as the two symbols in front of us, and pasting it into the HTML of a page. And we'll see that when we get to figure 1.15. The code does not create a copy, but allows the material to be viewed within the resource. However, once again, you need to be careful when embedding. The material needs to be legitimate, and you should only embed material when the hosting site enables it to be embedded. For example, YouTube allows videos on their platform to be embedded on other sites by providing the code for this under the Share options. Here you can see a code from YouTube which was copied to embed the Creative Commons licenses explained video, and this is licensed under a 3.0 NZ license. And so this is figure 1.15, which was referred to in the previous slide. Permissions. You will need to seek permission from the copyright holder if you want to use copyright material in an OER and can't rely on an exception and are unable to link to it. You'll also need permission to use openly licensed materials if they have incompatible licenses. That is, if you are combining CC by SA and CC by NC materials, or if your use falls outside the license scope, e.g. you are adapting CC by ND material. If you want to use copyright material in your OER in a way that is beyond the conditions of the express license, then you will need to contact the copyright owner for further permission. You'll need to seek that permission in writing and outline how you plan to use the material, where your OER will be hosted, and the type of Creative Commons license you are assigned to it. The next section focuses on attribution. Even when you can legally use a resource, it is important that you acknowledge the work of others. This is a legal, moral right and an important academic integrity principle. It is also a cornerstone condition of open licenses. An attribution statement or notice provides credit to the original creator and is a legal requirement of an open license. So there are two concepts, attribution versus citation. A citation allows authors to provide the source of any quotations, ideas, and information that they include in their own work based on the copyrighted work of other authors. An attribution is similar to a citation, but there are also differences, and these are shown in Table 1.2 on the next slide. So the table here shows us the differences between citation and attribution. Citation, the purpose is academic. For example, avoiding plagiarism. It does not typically include licensing information for the work, can paraphrase but cannot typically change the work's meaning. Many citation styles are available, such as APA, Chicago, and MLA, and cited resources are typically placed in a reference list. If we look at attribution in comparison, the purpose is legal, e.g. following licensing conditions. It includes licensing information for the work. You can typically change the work, e.g. advance permission granted with license. Attribution statement styles are still emerging, but there are some defined best practices. And attribution statements are typically found near the work used, traditionally below an image. So attribution statements. There's no one correct way to provide an attribution statement, but the best practice, as mentioned before, is to include the full tassel information for the resource. So tassel stands for T equals title, A stands for author or creator, S stands for source or a link to the resource, L stands for license or the link to the license deed. If you don't have all of the tassel information about the resource, do the best you can and include as much detail as possible in the attribution statement. So if we look at figure 1.16 here, it's a good example of a statement as it includes all of the tassel information with appropriate links provided. So the title is Creative Commons 10th Birthday Celebration San Francisco. The author or the creator is Tvol, hyperlinked to his profile page. The source is Creative Commons 10th Birthday Celebration San Francisco, so that has been hyperlinked at the start to the original Flickr page where that image can be found. And the license at the end is CC BY 2.0, and that's hyperlinked to take you to the license deed. When a work is adapted, changes need to be indicated in the attribution statement along with the creator of the original work. An example is demonstrated here. It's figure 1.17. You can see that it's the same image as on the previous slide, but it has been altered in terms of the color and the contrast. So in this case, the actual attribution statement would be, this work, Nightified, is a derivative of Creative Commons 10th Birthday Celebration San Francisco by Tvol, used under CC BY, and Nightified is licensed under CC BY, and then you put your name. So there's two licenses there. There's the one for the original source or image, and there's one that you are using in terms of the adaptation. Coming towards the end of our workshop, we'd like to have a look at Indigenous culture and intellectual property and how to use this in regards to open educational materials. Indigenous cultural and intellectual property, or ICIP, refers to the right of Indigenous Australians to protect their cultural heritage, including all aspects of art, knowledge systems and culture, according to Janke. When planning to include Indigenous content in OER, it is important to be aware and have knowledge of ICIP, and to respect the rights of Indigenous individuals and communities to be consulted and to provide consent. It is crucial to seek appropriate Indigenous permissions to use or distribute Indigenous knowledge. The following sources provide guidance and information about Indigenous protocols. We have the Australian Council for the Arts, Protocols for Using First Nations Cultural and Intellectual Property in the Arts, Oxfam Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Cultural Protocols, and True Tracks by Indigenous lawyer Terry Janke, which provides information about the legal protection of Indigenous art, cultures and knowledge. Be aware that Indigenous cultural IP may not fit into the traditional areas of copyright and reuse. It's best to seek out help from those who have expertise in this area. I'd like to invite you to register for an open education at CDU Community of Practice that we're looking to set up at CDU. It's for academics. We're looking to meet online on a regular basis. And the purpose of this community is to share and discuss initiatives and practices in the open education space. If you are interested or you'd like to find out more information, there is a code here that you can access, and there's also a QR code that you can click on, and then you can answer a few short questions, and we can then make contact with you about this community of practice. And one of the last slides, I'd like to actually acknowledge who works in the OER space at CDU in case you want to reach out and find out more about copyright and attributions in the OER space. We have our open education librarian. Her details are on the screen here, and you can contact her by email or by phone. We have our digital learning designers within our Teaching and Learning Connect team. Once again, they have an email or they can be contacted by a telephone number via this particular site. And we have our wonderful academic and research librarians that can assist you with faculty specific OERs and OERs in general. If you have any questions about this workshop, you can contact the library via email at askthelibrary@cdu.edu.au. We have a phone number. We also have a SMS service that you can contact us on. And we have our QR codes here to our various library resources and services. Thank you.